Tip of the day number 14. Learn daily physical exercises you can perform at home. This will help to keep you active and reduce boredom in case you need to stay at home. Need help and support? Please contact us at the hotline 311 Psychosocial Support at 722-6575 or 518-4157. Brought to you by PAHO, the OACS Commission, and UNICEF.
The opinions expressed on this TV program by the host, co-host, guest, and call-in listeners or chatters are solely the opinions and responsibility of the original source who expressed them. They do not necessarily represent the opinions of UTV or its affiliates.
Hello and welcome. Thank you for joining the Revolution. Yes, today is Wednesday, the 14th of April, 2021. We'll be doing shout-outs tomorrow, so be sure to send your shout-outs to 758-519-1818. Yes, 758-519-1818. That's my number. Send the shout-out, write it out, type it out through WhatsApp as best, and send it to me so that I name where you're coming from, name the people, and if there are nicknames, spell them phonetically, spell it how you want me to pronounce it, and I'll be sure to do my best. And don't forget, folks, it's not just birthdays or wedding anniversaries or even missed family, but there are some people who are feeling very down. There are many who cannot find work, many whose businesses have been stifled, many who are feeling the stagnation, the depression, and the frustration. And you never know if just reaching out might make a difference. So, no matter how long the greeting is, I'll do my best. Folks, I wish I could say yesterday was a good day in the sense that I'm sorry, I'm tired of watching and listening to Shasney, no matter how many clips you see me play here, because it is what is of relevance and consequence, because these are the people that impact our lives, sadly, on an almost intimate level, but definitely economic, health, and security-wise, and so on. But when I remember, just like you, the budget has been so drawn out and strung out, and all the politicking in between and all of the curfews and protocols, when I remembered that this guy had his speech in the afternoon, boy, I started to cringe, because first thing I'm like, boy, malapropisms, bullets, fake, nauseating. I mean, even he had to go and drink water at one point, even when Sir John, who spoke for an hour and a half longer, never did, and he was 81. But still, wow. And I had to listen to it, and it was painful. It was painful. I think the two things that for me were painful were, one, that I had to sit through it. And I kept telling myself, Lord, I hope this is his last ever budget presentation. I really hope so. I don't even want him in rebuttals in the House after an election if he were to lose. I just fed up. It's just, And then the other part, where you see people like Minerva Ward and the rest of the surrogates, they were trying to make out like what he had said was such great prose. And don't get me wrong, the consultants and the people that wrote that for him, they gave him good material, they gave him lines, they gave him everything. But you see, when you spend so much time being a con man and a fake, and then you have fake people who are trying to get you to fake what you're doing for people who have already been fooled, who have already paid the price for giving you their good faith judgment and endorsement, it really rings hollow. And I try to think, I remember George Odlum and the rest would characterize, and they would tell you, this is the bikini budget, or this is whatever budget, the Maliway budget, or whatever budget they would want to say. Well, to me, this was the budget. To me, it's just a whole bunch of shit that was thrown out there. He just figured, or they just figured this is the last dance kind of a thing. Let's just throw out all the bells and whistles. Oh, the willow tree and all the rest of that. So where do we start? Let's start bringing everybody back to reality.
The St. Lucia National Trust has asserted that Janine Compton Antoine was the most suitable applicant to take up the leadership of the organization.
The relationship between myself and Janine has not been a good one. This is not a person that when we meet in public that we even shake hands. And so therefore to have somebody who has made it public her opinion about my party.
I mean, Janine Compton is the daughter of Sir John Compton. Sir John Compton is the founder of the United Workers' Party. Sir John Compton is the man who made Alan Chasney a minister for tourism. And if they can treat her like that.
So I don't think that she has the skill set to be able to develop the trust.
The marine biologist nomination was met with a rejection.
I have just basically have the right to do that.
I think Janine Compton is capable. I think she was qualified.
You can't talk about democracy and the rule of law and not act that way.
Janine chose to resign from our party, and she decided to run independent. In addition to that, at the last elections, there were certain allegations that Janine made towards my government.
The Workers' Party candidate for Castries Central, Sir Flood Broben, says an allegation against former Agriculture Minister Ezekiel Joseph must not be taken lightly. Flood Broben was sorry that the matter had come up at this point, but she stated that an allegation has been made and must be taken seriously.
A former executive member of the United Workers' Party women's arm has come to her defense.
When women come out in St. Lucia and they say they have been assaulted, they have been raped, the culture of blaming the woman has to stop.
What's important, right? What's important is that in that conversation that there can be mutual respect on both parts.
People keep saying my father's party, but for me right now what exists there is not what John Compton put or builds.
You're playing Lucia like Dick, like jackasses as you call us, you understand? The poor man ain't know nothing, the poor man ain't see nothing, you understand? The poor man blind. Chasney, call the election, Chasney. Come on, Chasney, call the election. Yeah, as I tell all my people, 5 years ago, 4 years ago and a half, I didn't vote for Chasney to come and rule my country like that. We were dissatisfied with the previous regime, so we came out in full force and give the white boy the chance. And what the white boy does? He attack our founder, our party founder, family. Say Janine Compton is not his selection to work with the National Trust, though she's the most qualified. Why? And coming behind Janine Compton and Mrs. Compton back and asking Nina Compton to represent St. Lucia as a goodwill ambassador. Who will support a prime minister or government that goes support them kind of misleading our people and treating us like we are second class and no class in our country, you understand? St. Lucians, the fifth in our country, the fifth class in our country, because the foreigners come before us, the friends and family from abroad, they come before us, and the little house slaves, fuckers and the fuckers, yeah man, all them come before us. So St. Lucians, we way back in our land, man. We ain't nothing. So we have to let Shafton know in this coming election, we're taking our country back, man.
What have we allowed to become normalized? People haven't made an issue out of it in the real sense. The government just attacks the National Trust and this one, that one. Folks, our civil liberties are being attacked by the very Prime Minister that we have. The one who holds the highest seat in our democratic process literally denied somebody employment based on their political affiliations or lack thereof. So literally the Prime Minister's telling us and literally targeted and victimized Janine Compton Antoine, saying that because she spoke against his party, even though his ass don't belong to him in the UWP so much, he had to take Compton's legacy and Arson James' legacy to buy a seat. Because the people of Suffrage judged him properly and soundly rejected him. That he can turn around and say that you cannot work in your country, of which I was not even born, you cannot work in St. Lucia because of who you support or don't support politically. And you think that if this guy is going to get re-elected, that an endorsement of his practices, that he'll get better? He won't get worse. But now is the time for you to pretend like nothing is a big deal.
Tim, pleasant good evening to your honorable guest.
Hello, good evening to you.
Hi, good evening, Tim. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead, please, caller.
Okay, good evening to our honorable Prime Minister. I'm calling, I hear a lot of focus on infrastructural development, roads, visible things, but I'm not seeing, like the caller from Mondido, I voted for this government, I supported them, but like him, I have buyer's remorse. I'm not seeing, and I know the Ambassador Fletcher called to talk about the detractors, etc. But friend Tim and dear PM, and the friend is not leading you if you're doing something that's not kosher or not exactly right. As your friend, they should tell you what you're doing that's not right. Now I'm speaking specifically, okay, I'm not looking for handouts, COVID relief, but I own a business in the CDC. And during the lockdown, the Prime Minister, that's one of your first, that's the time we were giving you all the kudos. I mean, you stepped up to the plate and offered relief. And you said public, you're actually encouraging landlords to waive rent. And I'm saying the government owning the CDC buildings, Housing Development Authority, is expecting vendors like me, tenants like me, to pay for rent when there was no business. I would have loved to come and open my business and make $1. The place was closed for weeks. And in all fairness, Prime Minister, if we can take money to build roads, some places repave roads that were already good. I'm thinking the news, it was very topical in the news week before, when the lady responsible from the Housing Authority says that tenants are liable unless she gets a further directive. So I'm on national TV asking dear PM for you to honor your promise to the tenants in the CDC, business owners, to waive rent, especially, I'm not asking about when we open, I mean, what you sow is what you reap, to waive rent for the time when the country is under national curfew. That's one. Secondly, PM, as a politician, I think that you are visionary, I agree. But when it comes to nationalism and patriotism, I think we're losing points in that regard. We hear Carbot, we hear DSH, etc. I'm all in for development. But if you can tell me, I think you have your issues with Mr. Tulsi and the National Trust. If we look at what the National Trust, they mandate and what they're responsible for, I think the National Trust is bigger than the feud between yourself and Mr. Vishnu Tulsi. And it's about time that you bury the hatchet and start giving him $1 million a year. We have, I mean, endless money about the place. Give him $2 million here, 500. I think we have to invest in St. Lucia and St. Lucians. And I think it's about time that National Trust gets a plug. I mean, a lot of people like me who voted for your party are saying they refuse to vote because, I mean, it's half a dozen, 6 and whatever. But I refuse to say I'm not voting. And a lot of people like me on the fence. I'm watching it closely. And if I have to drive them personally to vote, I think the onus is on you for us to see a different shift, a different ball game for us to decide where we're voting. But we will vote. Thank you.
Thank you so much for calling, ma'am. Mr. Prime Minister.
So there's a multitude of things that the caller brought into play, but it seems that the player is using the old trick of suggesting that they supported my party, because in fact, if she had supported the party, then she would have known the answer to many of the questions that she asked. So this idea that there were roads that were repairing that didn't repair, and I would love to know which road that was not in need of repairing. I've heard persons suggest the Corinth Road or the Grand Rivera Road. When you go to the constituency in that area, I think they would give you a very different story as to whether in fact that road needed to be repaired. So this idea that there were roads that were repairing that didn't repair, and I would love to know which road that was not in need of repairing. I've heard persons suggest the Corinth Road or the Grand Rivera Road. When you go to the constituency in that area, I think they would give you a very different story as to whether in fact that road needed to be repaired. And certainly the road program has been about strengthening the back roads, and this was work that was already engaged and funded prior to COVID coming in, and certainly having that kind of work taking place during the COVID period certainly has helped make for the shortfall in tourism. With regards to the CDC, just last week, some of the merchants from CDC wrote me a letter, and I will be having a meeting with the Castries City Council and with the Housing Association, well, Housing, it's called HIC, to look at what is being asked for and to find out exactly what was provided to them. Certainly, if in fact we can help them during the period during the lockdown, I think that that's a very fair request. But keeping businesses open, keeping the economy open was actually the best way to try to help a lot of people. So it's sad, but it's not unexpected that COVID came back up, because it's very difficult for persons to remain with that level of discipline for that period of time. But we've gone up and we've down, and like businesses, the government has also suffered in terms of still having more expenses, because the more COVID cases we have, the more testing we have to do, the more people in the respiratory center, the more persons we have to hire, we have to bring the hotels back in terms of being able to put quarantine in places. So it kind of works against us. Every single time that we have a breakout, we lose revenue because the country is being shut down, and we have an increased amount of cost.
And on the St. Lucia National Trust issue, the St. Lucia National Trust and the matter involving Mr. Tulsi.
Yeah, I'm not so sure what the person is talking about. I mean, at the end of the day, I've had meetings with the National Trust. I've attended their annual general meeting. I'm very supportive of the role of National Trust. At the end of the day, there was a subvention that was provided to the Trust, which was supposed to be used for capital investment. And I've indicated that once the National Trust can provide the government the very clear direction of where they're going to go, we will be there to support them. There have been difficult times for the National Trust. We've given them a very small amount of money, and it's not nearly enough that they would need during these difficult times, and they've been hard hit because they equally have been involved, dependent on tourism. The caller also mentioned about Cabot and DSH. You know, Cabot's an amazing
project. Now, first of all, for the Prime Minister, just because we're close to elections, to pretend that he hasn't been going back and forth victimizing the National Trust for performing their actual job, what they were created for as a stakeholder agency, to give input when it came to environmental issues, sustainable development issues, and so on. Doesn't make sense, but that's what he's doing. Then, think about this, especially to United Workers' Party supporters. What does it say when your political leader does not even recognize his own supporters? Anybody that knows anything about politics knows there ain't no Labour Party supporter that will call and tell Shasney he's a visionary. Like I've said, Shasney is a fabulist. Essentially, a man who paints pictures, bullshit pictures, fantasies in your mind. That's not vision. That is conmanship. But that said, for her to call him a visionary, for her, and note well, she did not say vote in Labour. She said many would not vote. And that's traditionally what happens. That's what the voting patterns are. When people are dissatisfied with their party, whether it's UWP or Labour, there's a percentage that might vote for the other party, but you're more likely to get a higher percentage who will not vote as opposed to voting for the opposite party. Because so much of our partisan loyalties are built into almost generational and familial identity. Now that said, what does it tell you if he cannot recognize you? And what does it tell you in terms of his governance style if he not only doesn't see that you're hurting, won't accept that you're hurting, thinks that anybody who criticizes him or the policies and how they are impacting your daily life must be an opposition supporter? Then what happens if he wins again? But for now, let's give Shasney and all those out there who want to pretend that Shasney has not been after the trust. It actually goes all the way back to the first jazz festival when Shasney was the tourism guru, and he wanted Tulsi and them to cut trees to make space for the expanse of the stage. And Tulsi and them refused because at the end of the day, it is a nature heritage living museum and park. And ever since then, the vindictiveness. And when the Prime Minister says that the $700,000 subvention was only for capital projects, that's not true. is he that said that he would only give it for capital projects. But as has been pointed out by Mrs. King, that the capital projects have been submitted since 2017, since that was what he wanted. And you remember when famously he said he doesn't see the viability of a conference center, even though the conference center of the National Trust would probably be the most unique because it would have art from Derek Walcott, art from Dunstan St. Omer and others. But no, we all know Coco Palmer's conference centers as well.
Speaking outside Parliament on Thursday, Shasney sought to justify the lack of a subvention for the Trust in the 2020-2021 estimates. He believes that the Trust's mandate favors the few.
Police headquarters should be finished now. No, but the National Trust continues to believe that they have they're the caretakers of the patrimony of St. Lucia. They're not.
I'm a member of the Trust. I am a St. Lucian, a proud St. Lucian. I am a former member of Parliament, and I am the daughter of Sir John Compton, who stands right there looking at us in shock and horror. This is Constitution Park, right? These two trees here were planted on statehood when we became a nation. And this is what is happening today, that the voice of St. Lucia is slowly being silenced.
Compton Antoine, like many other individuals present, was not pleased with the heavy police presence witnessed on Tuesday.
This shows that the Prime Minister and the parliamentarians who we elected are afraid of us. They are afraid of the people of St. Lucia. They are afraid to hear our voice. A parliamentarian is supposed to be the voice of the people. That is why I elected you to speak on my behalf. But if you don't want to know my point of view, how can you speak on behalf of me? And this basically is saying you don't want to listen to me. You want to do what you want to do.
You see all this kind of barricade and all this kind of thing definitely shows you a sign that we have a kind of
That's an option that the government has.
People trust the government that appears to go back on its word.
It hasn't gone back on its word. Again, show me in the document where we've gone back on our word. Thank you very much. Any other questions at this point? Any other questions? Thank you very much.
So you duped the National Trust because you
So did you dupe the National Trust? To destroy a 200-year-old building. Who gave that order?
This is a very devious move on the part of the government as far as the trust is concerned. It is a dishonest move on the part of the government.
You can't talk about democracy and the rule of law and not act that way.
When Mr. Shasney, as Minister of Tourism, tried to sell the Queen's chain at Jallousy, I was chairman of Just.
Because they are conflicting interests, as I indicated.
It's not a business. It's heritage conservation, and unless you place value on heritage, you will then not see the value of what we do.
Because they are conflicting interests, as I indicated.
We will see a dolphin park in St. Lucia.
My father was part of a group to be able to bring a dolphin park here, and what they couldn't find was a location.
The government didn't interfere with the process. I have not interfered.
I encouraged the developers when they told me that they were having the feasibility of doing the park at Anjabet would be difficult, to look at Pigeon Island.
And he's a hypocrite.
Right? I have not felt that level of mutual respect.
But the talking point, which has provided much fodder in pro-UWP media circles, is not new and dates back over 10 years. In May 2010, in the pre-digital TV era, then Minister for Tourism in the Stephenson King-led UWP administration, Alan Shasney, espoused the same rhetoric. He had rebuffed Trust Director Bishnu Tulsi, who once again was complaining about the Queen's chain and access to public beaches.
A lot of undeveloped areas in St. Lucia. I think we have to make sure that as we develop, that we make sure that the areas are earmarked and that facilities are put in for the public's enjoyment of those beaches and even of parks, for that matter of fact. But I keep hearing these injections by the National Trust. I'm not so sure that they're the best people to make that claims. I mean,
my mother-in-law always said to me, "Revenge is for the Lord."
So I said, Mr. Tulsi needs to go.
I try not to personalize anything.
My sentiment that he's been a complete dismal failure.
Certainly my position has been, I try not to personalize anything.
Should it be every dog that barks that I should respond?
I try not to personalize anything.
He's a hypocrite. So even after the election, there is not
even I would say to a respectful relationship.
What's important, right? What's important is that in that conversation that there can be mutual respect.
I see the National Trust jumping up and down and jumping ahead of itself.
What the Prime Minister had to say was not respectful to us and was way out of line.
To do is just think about the DSH thing and all of that.
I think it is important for us not to separate conservation and development because they go hand in hand.
The only reason why we didn't do the development in the mangrove is because of the garbage dump, not because of major environmental concerns.
In developing our nation, we need to make sure we conserve the natural environment. And I got the feeling from the lecture we had that we are against development because we want to conserve the environment. And that's not true.
Now, the relationship between the trust and government is already one that is naturally tense because government wants to develop, the trust wants conservation.
You know, you can create natural spaces, and the natural spaces themselves is what will bring the development, because we're into tourism. We're into tourism, and the thing about the world now is ecotourism. So why do we think that making all the beaches in St. Lucia a national park for everybody to use, you know, having linear parks along the beachfront that is available to all and not to some, not excluding the beach for, you know, tourism, you know, the tourists alone, and leaving out our people and having a problem, you know, develop between the people and the tourism, but embracing it all. You know, conserve the environment, conserve the forest. Let's walk through the forest. Let's enjoy the forest. Instead of seeing the National Trust and people who are into the environment and conservation, we're not the enemy.
We've not made any secret of it. In opposition, we said what? We have to build a new St. Lucia.
But in his vision, what he forgot to tell us was that in order for him to provide us with this new St. Lucia, he's bent fast on destroying anything of the old St. Lucia, whether it's the St. Lucian psyche, whether it's our heritage sites, anything, and both in a metaphor and physically.
We have to build a new St. Lucia.
Let's work together to create a better St. Lucia for all. Let's create jobs that are not just making up the bed in the hotel, but jobs that, yes, let's get away from the plantation slavery and let's create jobs that are more lucrative for people and embrace it all.
And this is the same Minister of Finance that punished the National Trust by stripping it of its subvention because it refused to do its bidding. This is the same Minister of Finance who, by denying a trust an annual subvention, caused the National Trust to close the exhibition home of Derek Walcott. Now, the noble statements about developing culture. But then, Mr. Speaker, this is the new St. Lucia where punishment is meted out to those who disagree with the administration. That's the new St. Lucia. Welcome, Mr. Speaker, to the new St. Lucia.
So here we are. Most of us, I believe, myself for sure, finding that Chasney is the most vindictive prime minister that we've ever had, and definitely a budding dictator. Even by what he himself has said and done, how he was chided, how he was discarded and reprimanded in his own way with his rhetoric, the opposition, stakeholder groups, the Bar Association, the National Trust, and everybody in between. But you see, since we can choose our own realities now, it would appear that the United Workers' Party has a different view.
I remember him very, very well. And I will remember him even better after this general election in May. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
How do you
create yourself to become a dictator? First of all, I'm informed and I watch the news. A dictator, firstly, he does get involved with his army.
I can quickly answer that for you, Champagne, because I'll give you comparisons. How did Hitler become a dictator? Okay? There are certain people born with certain, what should I say, talents in their life, okay? That actually, I wouldn't use the word frighten people. They become, they start to admire these people, okay? That's what it is. You know, and in their eyes, these people can do no wrong. Look, let me say something to you. When Dr. Anthony came to St. Lucia, I was one of those that supported him 100%. I saw a good-looking gentleman, well-educated, and had been around, a constitutional lawyer, okay? But what has happened over the years is that many people less educated than Dr. Anthony were of the same opinion. So they created an individual in the eyes of what they expect to do. The same thing is happening to Hilaire today. He comes with a degree, and among the blind, the cock-eyed is king, and he does what he has to do. And there's some people
given a certain level.
Take George Odlum. He was another one, okay, who go on the market step, and people stand up in awe and listen to this guy. But then at the end of the day, the proof of the pudding is in the eating. What have they done? What have they done? And today, Dr. Anthony, when he was sitting in cabinet, no man say a word, okay? But anyway, in one sense, it's a plus for him, because you ask how people can become dictators. What happens? Such individuals accept that these things happen and continue, and it grows on them and also on the people.
So they see the level of respect and admiration from people, and they thrive on that. They grow into that. But the dictators of Mussolini and these guys, they were with their armies. The reason why I want to continue to stay with on Dr. Anthony. Give me 1 minute, I better Peter, sorry. The reason why I want to stay, because I saw on Nobody's program last night where the man is actually dictating when the election should call. I mean, who does that in opposition? He knows the rules. He knows it's only called by the Prime Minister when
he's exercising the same powers that he's enjoyed for years.
This is why I am.
But that is psychological warfare.
Correct, psychological warfare.
Let me say something.
You know, I'm amazed at how Kenny Anthony seems to continue to tickle the minds and disturb the United Workers' Party psyche. One sentence, I'll see you at elections in May. And boom, they just can't let go of it. Simple picong to me, a little psychology, yeah, fine. But first of all, Champagne, I saw it on Nobody's program. Jesus Christ. Wow. Then you hear Michael Shastney, it's instructive, says that the first thing that made him support Kenny Anthony was that he was a good-looking man. What does that mean? What does that mean? And then to infer that Kenny Anthony is a dictator. Well, folks, very plain and simple. And Shastney says, Sir Michael says, it's who the person admires and who the person extols in terms of their virtue and all the rest of that. But folks, I leave it to you. For Kenny Anthony, in terms of being shat on by the establishment class and the elites, and Shastney for having too many social safety nets, for being the Prime Minister that introduced a bursary for the disabled, and what I think is his greatest achievement, the PROUD program, to rationalize giving St. Lucians access to their land, especially those who had been squatting, because of the inequality that was created in our society through colonialism, where after the slaves were freed, the plantation owners, Anglo-European plantation owners, predominantly got the plantations, and the St. Lucians could never own their land. I don't know how that works out to be a dictator. You can be controller, you can be whatever, you can be a leader. But you're telling me that for Michael Shastney and Josie, Kenny Anthony is a dictator. For Champagne, he's a dictator because of the picong that he threw there. But Alan Michael Shastney is not a dictator? Well, all I can say is that I listen to what Shastney has been saying, who he admires, and all I can say is I see it differently.
it seems the only way to get into office is to cause chaos, whether we want demonstrations or not.
I have to tell you, there's a recent report that was done, very interesting, looking at, in fact, it was economists when they had with the president of China on the front cover of the New World Power. Mm-hmm. And it was talking about the different political systems around the world and saying, is it time for the Western world to accept that the Chinese model is a better model? People want to talk about the lack of democracy in the Chinese model, but you have to give them credit. The fact is that you don't become the president of China without going to university and training to become president. So you have to be a mayor of a small town, then you have the region, and you have to go through a lot before you get to that position. Versus our democratic system, in which you don't have to have any credentials.
Will I get COVID-19 from the vaccine? No, you will not get COVID-19 from the vaccine. If you remember, the vaccine is not the virus. It is simply a genetic code which helps the body to make the protein to recognize the virus. Sometimes after you've had the vaccine, you may get fever, body aches, or headaches. This is not COVID. This is your body simply learning to recognize it and to prepare you to fight the actual virus.
This is a message from the St. Lucia Medical and Dental Association.
The following is a paid political announcement.
I am Dr. Pauline Antoine Prosper, the St. Lucia Labour Party candidate for Choiseul Saltibus. I devoted my life to educating children in St. Lucia. My people of Choiseul, let us come together. Let's be part of history. Let's be part of the change.
For the past 23 years, I've been living here and I'm satisfied with what I'm seeing right now.
Well, it benefits me quite good, quite a lot. To me, it's a very good project after how many years, many different politicians has come and they said they want to do it. And now I see it's a very good project for me.
To tell you the truth, it have around 26 to 7 years. The road haven't fixed up yet, you over me. But right now in 2021, to tell you the truth, I see something happening, you over me. I don't have no problem with Mr. Heron. He's doing a good job. All I have to tell people, be with Herod, stay with Herod, live with Herod, now and forever.
The preceding was a paid political announcement.
Hi there, this is an exclusive
You're watching UTV TV for you.
Hi, I'm Raquel Duboulay-Chastany, and this is my OMG interview. I grew up in St. Lucia. My family is one of the oldest French families on the island. We've been around for a very, very long time. No, I'm very blessed, I think, to live in an island like St. Lucia. It's not something we ever grew up with. I know there are some other islands that deal with those ongoing tensions. It's not an issue we have ever faced in St. Lucia growing up. I think people have never made fun of my complexion and certainly not the other way around. I think it's one of the few islands in the Caribbean where I can truly say racism has never been an issue. I think when Alan entered the political arena, it was the first time I think somebody of his complexion had done that. And there were some calls, there were some comments. I think it was vastly in the minority, thank God, and ultimately it seemed to have not played a role in any way because obviously he was elected with a fairly overwhelming mandate.
Very diplomatic, very smooth. As far as I'm concerned, the second best politician in every sense of the word, with the exception of Guy Joseph. For sure. Very nice diplomatic answer. But the fact of the matter is that these things do play a role. And what I've realized is that whereas the United Workers' Party used it to draw sympathy for Chastany, even though even though he is the first political leader of either party in history to ever formally inject racial epithets when he called a press conference to call Kenny Anthony a massa. People like me have been at pains to try to explain that both Kenny and Shastney are white. There are people who said Compton is white, but the most important thing was, what are the value systems? Shastney, Alan Michael Shastney, has Anglo-European value systems and thinks down, looks down, talks down, sees little value in St. Lucia beyond it as a transactional, as a destination. He knows the price of everything, but the value of nothing that we do, because he does not share our values. Kenny Anthony is white, from Parker State, the Arcadian that came from the south, but at the end of the day, you can feel and see that he's St. Lucian. The same way I could say Oliver Sampson is in Lafargue right now. There are probably people who say he's a white man, but at the end of the day, much like many of the doubles who speak better patois, it's not just about speaking patois, but they're more St. Lucian. The Burgas brothers and all of these people, there are tons of white St. Lucians, if you want to put it that way, who are St. Lucian. That's the point. Shastney is a Canadian, a product of Canada, that St. Lucia would just happen to be some backwater shithole country that he only chose to exploit after he failed with all his other projects. But it's interesting because one of the things that this government does, last time they used, the UWP used Shastney's race, and not his race they should have used, but his lack of St. Lucian values, but they conflated them successfully to get sympathy for him. Now, this time, they're trying to do the same thing again, but there's a slight difference. They actually want people with that mentality to vote for Shastney because of his race.
And some desperate people out there, they are trying to malign him and to make his complexion an issue.
Another word for Kennynomics is plantocracy economics. Because it's only in the days of plantocracy that a landlord would impose taxes on the people who are working the lands and not care about the conditions of their work or their living conditions, but was more concerned about his own living standards.
I will tell you, no St. Lucian, no right-thinking St. Lucian will attack somebody on the complexion, the type of hair that they have, or anything like that.
A massa mentality.
Of course, children often carry the burdens of their parents and foreparents, but it is also equally unfair that you have to be judged not by who you are, but what others think you are. But the fact of the matter is, the Barnard family were never ever engaged in slavery. They were not plantation owners during the period of slavery. They actually arrived in the Caribbean in the 1880s, and they came out of Sussex in the United Kingdom.
They cannot find fault with the Prime Minister on his leadership and where he has taken this country. So they have gone to an all-time low to try and attack him on his complexion.
But when one sees where the history and the heritage of Dr. Anthony, and that a massa mentality, and you can change your name, but you cannot change who you are.
Look at that, folks. Niggers in control employment. Isn't Shastney right there? Isn't Shastney right there? Did he not implicitly endorse we black people being referred to in such a derogatory term? Did he not endorse it? Did he not endorse it? Did you all ever call him out? Pastor, did you ever call him out? And guess what? He used our people to degrade us. He used our people to degrade us.
In terms of what we do in this country. So if it was a white man who came to St. Lucia, and that white man got concessions like Lagan and CCIN. Lagan got a road for $43 million. Walked away with over $100 million in St. Lucia. White man. Okay? Then you have another one. You have CCI. CCI came here, got a $23 million contract.
But listen to their surrogates. Listen to Chasney's main surrogates. Listen to them. Either they are treating Chasney like some deity, or they are trying to sow into the minds of the people that he should be treated some kind of special way. See for yourself.
Politician.
And he's a good politician. I said to take on that responsibility. So that's nothing. So Charlie has nothing.
Hold on. When a politician tell you, well, I'm leaving my business and I'm coming because I love the people. Love the people what? You ever hear any politician come to get into politics and they come out, Brooks? All of them, they are well off for some reason. And the people they say they love always stay in the same way or getting worse.
Well, something goes wrong.
So when you tell me, people first, we care about you, and it's not me, I ain't coming to it to do anything. How many of them, they're going and represent some people don't even know where they live. And some of the constituents, they would never invite them to go to their home. So when you say you care about the people so much, well, if you, I come to...
But why should you go to
I'm just saying, hold on.
No, as a side point, Charlie.
No,
why should you go to... No, I believe the politicians...
If you come in it for the people, it's for the people, not for me.
But his home or her home, that ought to be,
all right.
Very separate.
Yeah.
So make space and time.
But then again, when you're campaigning, you go by the people home and sit down and drink in an old cup.
Mm-hmm.
You come into their home and sit down and drink. Okay, that's where you live. You don't mind anything. You're talking about
I like that. Charlie say you can't drink in an old cup.
Yeah. No, it's true. When you see the campaigning, they're all whole. The person can have a saw or anything, looking dirty, they care. They sit down there. Wait. When you see by chance you elect them, ever forget you think they'll go back there? Wait until the election. So when they come and tell you, oh, it's for you, I come and don't worry them. All of them that say they come and do it for you. Look at how they're living. They're better. Their children will go to university, and your children might even go to a preschool. So
and they get paid well, huh?
And they get paid well.
Yeah.
So if you want to do it for the people, sacrifice.
As a matter of fact,
help the people.
In this particular case there, Mr. Norbert, the SLP spokesperson said, because of his love for the people.
Your love for people. love for people. Your love for yes, we'll see.
Okay, so let me ask you a question, Charlie. Do you think our Prime Minister has a love for the people?
Yes.
Charlie. I rest my case.
They're intimidated by Alan because they realize Alan Chasney is an international kind of person. Wherever Alan Chasney goes, he's known. He has the introduction by different governments, the way he carries himself, the way he speaks, and maybe even his little kule YII. So why do you think Hele has been up front all the time and not Pip? The little kule YII Hele has. He's aware of it. All of the supporters know. They don't have Kenny Anthony anymore. I don't think Kenny Anthony wants to come back there. And I don't think the people of Beaufort might even vote for him.
No, they won't.
If we get a good candidate down there.
They won't.
So you see the dilemma the Labour Party faces. They don't like Alan Chasney. He's too white, his family is this and that and that. All sorts of criticism. And yet, there is jealousy of wanting to pick somebody who is just like Alan Chasney. In all of those things that the Labour Party is speaking, they know very well what they're trying to do. And there's an unspoken word, and as Sir Michael said, I was in the bosom of the beast, so I know the beast. I know it.
And you're saying the beast has not changed over the years?
The beast is getting worse, but guess what? I have the antitoxin for the beast.
Okay.
I have the vaccine for the beast.
Yeah, the antidote.
Yeah, the antidote. But guess what? The beast knows that the people of St. Lucia prefer a little cooler YII. St. Lucians don't like people that are too black unless it's their own family. Sometimes the people who have children that are black is born, they cut it by their own child, you know.
Alors, moi, quand vous savez qui, moi, si je vote by un nom blanc, passe by Philippe G-Pierre. Parce que c'est nom blanc qui a mis manger en l'état moi. Philippe G-Pierre, nom noir à 10 autres qui, nom noir à 10 autres qui, si ils vote by, il pas qu'à ça mette manger en l'état autres. Alors, nom blanc, dis-moi comme ça. Et quand ça mette manger en l'état moi, c'est pour ça moi si me vote by un nom blanc, passer by un nom noir. Alors moi quand penser que qui, zot ka comprendre ça moi ka dire. Moi dis comme ça, c'est nom blanc qui ka mette manger en l'état moi. Alors nèg noir pas ça mette manger en l'état moi si me vote by nom blanc, by nom blanc.
You can jump high, jump low. People like me that continue to say that in many ways the Labour Party seems preoccupied with winning the debate, while the UWP seems preoccupied with winning the elections. You've seen it in the States. It is a pure Republican model. In the Republican Party, the obstructionism has reached a level through Cambridge Analytica influences that if you have to sacrifice surrogates, sacrifice candidates, sacrifice senators, representatives, or whatever, in order for the greater good. You'll get a job through the corporate back door as a lobbyist or something like that, but you have to. And what I'm trying to tell you is simply this, that while they try to blame race and try to bring it back, since it hasn't worked, they will sacrifice Josie and all of their surrogates. Cambridge Analytica will not tell them, come and say it one time. It'll matriculate from the top and through the consultants they have throughout the Caribbean, like Hartley Henry and those they flying on helicopter when Shastny has to make his independence speech and his budget and all of that. And what happens is, these people they pushing that narrative. And you can chastise them. We can all cry foul. We can all say how immoral it is and all the rest of that. We can say all of that. But they are gambling because they are led by a shameless leader. They have a shameless culture. And those guys don't care if you curse them every which way from Sunday as long as they win. And if they can play on the psychology of people like that, fine. And then the question now becomes, are you, St. Lucia, ready to stand on a point of principle to make sure that even if this was a narrative, even if this is the narrative that they are pushing, that St. Lucia can grow and appeal to its better angels to make sure that every little child in St. Lucia can know whether you are Indian, black, white, young child, and you come from a poor family, middle class family, whether you're Syrian, whether you're Indian, that you can aspire to the highest office in the land. Are we going to send that message, or are we going to let the nefarious types have their way?
Should skin color or ethnicity be a factor when deciding on which political party or candidate to vote for? In the United States, a country with various ethnic groups, race matters. Minority groups, including Hispanics and blacks, overwhelmingly vote Democrat, and whites historically vote Republican. Here on St. Lucia, where blacks are in the majority, another factor seems to be at play: skin complexion. How dark or light the skin tone of a prospective political candidate is also on the ballot box on polling day. Peter Josie, a former government minister and once a revered political force, recently came under scrutiny for his theory on what he thinks gives a light-skinned Alan Shastny the edge over his dark-skinned political opponents.
Wherever Alan Shastny goes, he is known. He has the introduction by different governments, the way he carries himself, the way he speaks, and maybe even his little kulai.
Josie's comments, according to some political commentators, did not come as a surprise, characterizing it as an, quote, unspoken truth, end quote. A few months after his comments, another staunch United Workers' Party supporter, Shane Ephraim, popularly known as Ring the Bell, echoed similar sentiments on his Facebook talk show. Aside from his stated endorsement of the UWP, Ephraim did not mince words about why he will not vote for the dark-skinned St. Lucia Labour Party political leader, Philip J. Pierre.
Philip J. Pierre nom nou a 10 autres kaki, nom nou a 10 autres kaki, 6 autres vote bay, I pa kay sa mette manjan le tabzot.
Labour Party stalwart and former spokesman Winston Springer wants to dispel the discriminatory light-skin versus dark-skin notions.
It is time to set standards for this generation and those coming. All discrimination and prejudice in the name of color, creed, and politics must be denounced here in St. Lucia, the entire region, and the world. And so I'm calling on all civil society to openly condemn the statement made by the operative of the United Workers' Party. The statement was moronic, asinine, insultive, and degrading to all people of color here in St. Lucia and the rest of the world.
Alors, non blanc dit moi comme ça, I kay sa mette manjan l'étape moi, c'est pour ça moi si me vote bay un nom blanc, passe bay un nom noir. Alors moi ka pense que qui zot ka comprendre ça moi ka dia.
Among the recommended guidelines to help voters pick a political candidate or party include evaluating their position on local and national issues, their track record, and leadership abilities.
The people of St. Lucia prefer a little cooler wayayay. St. Lucians don't like people that are too black unless it's their own family.
The guidelines do not include skin tone and race. Springer has called on St. Lucia's civil society and the UWP leadership to not only condemn Ring the Bell's discriminatory rhetoric, but also raise awareness and start the conversation on an uncomfortable and unspoken truth.
We have seen such behavior before. In January of 2015, when a participant in a United Workers' Party march carried a placard referring to nice workers as niggers in charge. The United Workers' Party leadership, members and supporters, trade unions, religious bodies, the Chamber of Commerce, national youth organizations, and other political parties must add their voices in denouncing such utterances.
Stevenson King and Dr. Von Lewis, both dark-skinned men, did ascend to the prime ministership, although neither actually led their parties to an election victory. In contrast, the late Sir John Compton, Dr. Kenny Anthony, and Alan Chasney, all leaders of their respective parties and light-skinned, did enjoy election success as political leaders.
You know what's really sad? When you think of Ring the Bell, and I speak about the house slave mentality, here's somebody that pulled a knife on his own family, all 4 of which were at the door of his vehicle, pulled a knife on them, all of them females, and in his own community of Oleon. And for anybody that knew their history, they would know that Oleon is actually one of the settlements that came from rebellious slaves and slaves who wanted to be free, fleeing and establishing Oleon as a place for people who wanted to live free. And yet that house slave sits right there saying and spewing what he's spewing.
Hey girl, what's your name? What's your name? Hey,
you're in a good mood.
Girl, if I tell you, I just pre-registered for the COVID vaccine. Hey, but yes.
Supporting you in getting vaccinated is important to us at the Ministry of Health. By selecting one of the options for pre-registering, it helps us to be better prepared and more efficient at managing your demand for vaccination. There are 3 ways to pre-register for your COVID-19 vaccine. 1. Go online by visiting https://hmi.govt.lc/. 2. Contact your closest wellness center. Or 3. Contact your private physician. When we get vaccinated, we don't only protect our health, we are taking action that benefits the health of our entire nation. Vaccinate for you, for yours, for us. A message brought to you by the Ministry of Health and Wellness.
The following is a paid political announcement.
The project that we're doing in Gros Lake, we call it T Village, which is next to the fire station, where we've taken that land, subdivided it, put water, electricity in it, sidewalks, designed it out now for small businesses, because that's really what that is. We had 33 lots available, over 300 people applied. All right? And you're seeing all around the country people now moving into new businesses. And I want to make sure that we don't frustrate those persons and that the government is moving in tandem for a lot of those persons in making sure that there are resources available to them.
The preceding was a paid political announcement.
You're watching UTV. TV for you.
A BBC publication dated September 6th revealed that St. Lucia was listed among 17 countries considered by the EU as tax havens. That list follows the leak of the Panama and Paradise Papers, both revealing how companies and individuals hid their wealth from tax authorities around the world in offshore accounts. The 17 countries named include St. Lucia, Barbados, Trinidad and Korea, with an additional grey list of 47 countries who have promised to change their tax rules. Now on Wednesday, Prime Minister Alan Chasney acknowledged the gravity of the situation and announced his government's intention to work with the EU on a resolution. However, during a press conference a day later, opposition leader Philip J. Pierre noted that St. Lucia was blacklisted due to its non-compliance with the EU's Base Erosion and Profit Standards, or BEPS. Initiated at the G20 summit in 2012, BEPS essentially refers to tax planning used by multinational companies to exploit gaps and mismatches in tax rules to artificially shift profits to low or no tax locations where there is little or no activity.
The EU, in labeling St. Lucia and 16 other countries as having harmful preferential tax regimes, said in a press release it was interested in promoting good governance worldwide and maximizing efforts at preventing tax fraud and evasion. The EU said St. Lucia does not apply the base erosion and profit shifting minimum standards and has not clearly committed to addressing these issues by 31st December 2018. But Prime Minister Alan Chasney, in reacting to the decision, says St. Lucia has been actively cooperating with the EU and that in November 2016, St. Lucia became signatory to an agreement for the exchange of information.
By being put on this list right now, it's about us being able to meet with the EU and the OECD and hopefully finding a way in which we can either agree to abolish some of the tax regimes that we have currently in St. Lucia, or to amend them in order to be able to meet what we call their minimum standards.
What St. Lucia had to do was to commit to changes by December 2018. It's because of negligence of the government that they did not give the EU a commitment. All they had to do was to give the EU a commitment that they would deal with the BEPS. That's what they had to do. They failed in doing that. But the more important question is, what did St. Lucia do? What legislation did we introduce? What did the Prime Minister say that caused us to be blacklisted after we had never been blacklisted before?
Do you remember that? 2017, there are those who tell you nobody remembers anything beyond the last 3 months before elections. Well, we're in the last 3 months before elections. Right now, the whole farce is to pretend that because we've gotten in our first shipment of vaccines, 24,000 vaccines, which half of that, is going to the second dose for what we got donated, which means we should have about 12,000 left, which means we can do another 6,000 people. So 26,000 people of our population will be fully vaccinated, and the rest of us will be there, and this government will pretend, and who knows if they'll cook the books, we'll wait to see. Somewhere in the next 3 weeks or so, I can tell you, they'll just pretend there's no COVID, lift the state of emergency because they want an excuse to campaign. Watch and see. Remember, mark the date, it's the 14th. By the first week of next month, you'll see it. Just watch. But that said, we got put on the blacklist under the Chasney administration, 2017, right? Now let's keep following.
Philip J. Pierre, political leader of the St. Lucia Labour Party, says prior to June 2016, St. Lucia had been on a steady path towards debt management. He believes if the current administration had continued the same fiscal policies, the country would have been in a better economic state.
The country had a good start. We dealt with the crisis, with the financial crisis, and then the country had shown, and all the reports show, that the country was beginning to improve. From 25th, 26th, the country was beginning to improve. All that had to happen is that we had to continue on that trajectory of improvement. That's all we had to do. But we changed things around, we did a lot of things, and that may cause some issues.
Pierre says his party wants to see St. Lucia prosper economically, but the government seems to be operating in an alternative universe where going against tried, true and established best practices is the norm. The leader of the opposition pointed to the UWP administration's new model for the Huronora Airport's redevelopment as an example.
We had a model for a PPP where there would have been revenue sharing, there would be income tax payments, and the airport would have belonged to the people of St. Lucia. It would never change ownership, but the running and the maintenance of the airport would be for 30 years. And it would be transparent, that would be transparent. There would be no issues as there are now, no issues of bidding, no issues of who did what right. There'd be no need to defend ourselves, there'd be no need to claim honesty or dishonesty. We would have had a transparent process.
Philip J. Pierre believes the government has a poor understanding of the limited fiscal space within which the country can maneuver. This week, the European Union named St. Lucia amongst the 17 countries populating a blacklist of non-compliant tax jurisdictions.
However, blacklisted countries may no longer be used by EU institutions for international financial operations, and transactions involving them could be subject to closer scrutiny, something small states like St. Lucia can ill afford.
The suggestion is that you will not be able to access any EU funding other than development funding. And I want to distinguish between the two at this point. And my understanding is the EU is also trying to get other international agencies to also agree to that process. But that has not happened as yet. So I don't see that, other than being singled out on the list, that there is any pending penalties that we're going to have to face. But it doesn't mean that that's not going to happen. And so it's certainly St. Lucia's intention to work with the EU. We're not looking to be in an adversarial position with the EU, but hopefully remedy the situation in which we can also remain competitive on the global market.
St. Lucia, the Prime Minister says, has some 5,000 registered offshore companies, with a handful being European. No British overseas territories such as the Cayman Islands or Bermuda were put on the blacklist in what was seen as a diplomatic victory for London. They were put on the grey list instead. Bermuda was at the center of the Paradise Papers. 8 Caribbean islands, recently hit by hurricanes, including Anguilla and the Bahamas, were given until March to comply with EU standards before a decision is made on their listing.
So now that we understand blacklisting, let's put it in a simplified analogy. The European Union has all of its taxpayers paying money for their benefit, for their roads, their schools, their healthcare and everything. Then, as the European Union, they will do something like, let's say for example, give the largest amount of grant aid ever in the Caribbean for the building of the Owen King European Union Hospital secured by Kenny Anthony. Largest grant aid ever issued by the European Union. Do you know how insultive it is for St. Lucia to then create a tax haven so that these governments can have their nationals hide their assets in St. Lucia, of which their taxpayers' money is what gives us the grants? So talk about biting the hand that will give you a grant by situating the same people who they take their taxpayers' money and we get a quass out of. But who calls that? Who calls that? Well, 2017, who's the Prime Minister? Who's the Minister for Finance? Who's the one that basically tried to set St. Lucia up as a tax haven? I'll give you a guess.
Madam Speaker, I beg to move for a second reading of a bill shortly entitled International Business Companies Amendment. What we want to be able to do is to be able to attract more regional companies to begin with, Madam Speaker, to move their headquarter offices to St. Lucia. So the amendment to this act, Madam Speaker, really speaks specifically about creating the legal framework to allow companies now not only to have a registered company here in St. Lucia, but also in addition to that, now to establish and define a headquarters office. And we've indicated that headquarters office must employ at least 10 people. And that company now, as a headquarters office, would benefit from the same levels of incentives that our IBCs also be able to benefit from. So, Madam Speaker, some people may question, why would we want to do this? Why would we want to give these levels of exemptions, i.e. income tax free and customs duty free? Because these are businesses that would not exist in St. Lucia if it were not for these incentives. And what we're trying to do, Madam Speaker, is to create a new financial business where we can now start creating the volumes. Because what these companies are going to do now is to use our local lawyers and use our local accounting firms. But more importantly, that when they go out to rent properties or they go out to get their grocery store or get gas, they are paying the value-added tax, Madam Speaker. So they're helping in terms increasing the consumption. We also know that if we have these headquarters offices here, the likelihood of them now having more regular meetings and inviting additional people into the country to participate in these meetings is only going to help now strengthen our conference business and meetings business here in St. Lucia, Madam Speaker.
Isn't that fantastic? So we got ourselves blacklisted because Chasney wanted to attract high-end individuals, just like Alva Baptiste pointed out. Everything to create a bourgeois enclave. Who came? Nobody except for Digicel, bringing in its head office here. And sadly, while that sounds good, it meant that a lot of the local staff of Digicel were let go because they were bringing in their head honchos. But they're coming because, just like with DSH, just like with everything else Chasney does, he looks at people with money and gives them everything for free. And what do we gain? So if they buy their groceries in St. Lucia, if they go out to dinner, if they rent conference centers, wow, Coco Palm again, right? If, and that's optional for them. And in the meantime, we put ourselves on a blacklist for one of the people, one of the groupings, the European Union, that literally has given us our largest grant aid in the Caribbean. Now, Chasney caused the problem as Minister of Finance. Chasney's mentality caused the problem. It's not that we don't have incentives for people to locate businesses here, but the fact of the matter is we had never been on a blacklist before. And who got us there? Chasney. And Chasney promised that we would be able to resolve it. We were in around late 2017. He said by March 2018 it would be resolved. Remember that by March 2018. And the opposition again spoke out.
There were some bills that gave IBCs, international business companies, complete tax breaks. They pay no work permit fees. They get all their equipment in free of duty. Tax breaks for IBCs. But we only had 6 days notice.
We had notice, like everybody else. So the Prime Minister cannot say that if in his own deliberate and incompetent judgment, 6 days is not enough. It is not within his purview. The Prime Minister is not a prime dictator. The Prime Minister is the Prime Minister of the country, and he's been elected by the people of St. Lucia, and he must follow the rules and procedures. There were some bills that gave IBCs, international business companies, complete tax breaks. They pay no work permit fees. They get all their equipment in free of duty. Tax breaks for IBCs.
So very simple. Chastain trying to create his bourgeois enclave, messed up again, screwed up again, and once again we, the St. Lucian people, paid the cost. Because to get us off the blacklist, right, to get us on the grey list, to get us on all of these things, you have to put in more resources. You have to bring in legal counsel, financial counsel. You have to augment government services. You have to lobby. You have to do all kinds of stuff. And the worst part is the shamelessness of it. This is a black mark. This is an X in terms of wrong in the exam. This is a blemish on St. Lucia's reputation, something caused by Chastain, a self-inflicted wound, a negative, a bobo, a calmaso, whatever you want to call it. It's something that Chastain did that went horribly wrong, just like the range development crap and what else he's done with CIP. But yet in the budget yesterday, Chastain, in true shameless fashion, actually tried to make, like, after digging us into a hole, throwing us in a ditch, by getting us out not within 6 months later or 5 months later, by March of 2018, literally in 2021, February 2021, you get us off the blacklist after you got us on, and you actually boasting about that as an achievement?
Mr. Speaker, despite the pressures of the pandemic efforts geared towards removal of St. Lucia on the European EU list of non-cooperative jurisdictions for tax purposes, were sustained over the course of 2020. Mr. Speaker, on February 15, 2021, St. Lucia was officially removed from the EU's grey list. Our nation first appeared in the EU's annex, the blacklist, in December of 2017, but was subsequently placed in Annex 2, the grey list, in March of 2018. After a commitment was given to address all of the deficiencies highlighted by the European Code of Conduct Group as they relate to the international business sector. Between 2017 and 2020, the government worked tirelessly to make the requirements of all of the EU and engaged in extensive discussions with various stakeholders, both locally and internationally, to ensure compliance with the EU. Unfortunately, some of our regional counterparts are still on the blacklist or the grey list of the EU. Over the past 3 years, Mr. Speaker, the government pursued the enhancement of new legislation, the amendment of existing legislation, and the streamlining of procedures and processes in order to comply with the requirements of the EU. It must be stressed that the changes made are in keeping with the international tax standards set by the Organization of Economic Cooperation and Development and the Global Forum on Transparency and Exchange of Information for Tax Purposes, both of which have issued a compliant rating to St. Lucia. We wish to register our appreciation to the many stakeholders, particularly the registered agents and trustees and the companies they represent, as we continue to engage them in further dialogue in advancing other sectoral reforms geared at providing a conducive business environment for them to operate. Mr. Speaker, my government reaffirms its commitment to meeting international tax standards as they relate to transparency, the exchange of information, countering tax evasion, avoidance, based on erosion of profit sharing, whilst fostering the development and expansion of business sector.
It's a hell of a thing to see a government put us in a bad situation, something that was not only avoidable, but best practice, and if you cared about the reputation of the country, you would try to avoid at all costs. It's not even good business sense. But yet still, after you do it, you have the temerity to come and pat yourself on the back and make people bang the table and everything as if it's something good that you did. So we want another example? Well, first we have to make sure to listen to the chairman of Invest in Lucia and now current chairman of the United Workers' Party, Pinkley Francis, when he's telling you and admitting that there's foreign labor, Chinese labor, coming to do the Galaxy project, knowing that that is funded by our passports again, right? But also recognizing that after we, the Solution people, don't have shares in the project, we are losing pristine land again in another Chasney project. And then on top of that, we are in a country that has been decimated by unemployment, compounded by COVID. We have tradesmen all over St. Lucia, carpenters, masons, steel benders, right? All kinds of construction workers and so on. And instead, they are importing Chinese labor as we speak, building Chinese living quarters for their Chinese workers. And you hear it being admitted as if it's not a big deal.
Canals Resort.
The time frame between when a developer shows interest in your opportunities and the beginning of the project averages anywhere from 2 to 7 years, and that is a global figure. It is therefore quite an achievement that after less than 2 years of indication of interest from the developers, that we are now here signing the beginning of this project.
CIP-approved real estate projects around the region have not fared well, with mixed results in some countries. While the government of St. Lucia has expressed faith in Galaxy Real Estate, the company has encountered challenges in other territories. For example, in St. Kitts, the much-talked-about Ramada by Wyndham Resorts by Galaxy Real Estate, which has been under development since 2014, has yet to be completed, with a revised opening date set for the first half of 2020.
So we went down the list of all the things that people wanted: healthcare, education, infrastructure, job opportunities, entrepreneurship, to be international, to earn an income that was high enough that I could travel around the world.
However, it should be noted that many of the CIP real estate projects in the Caribbean have been fraught with challenges. According to Investment Migration Insider, which has developed a tracking tool to keep tabs on such developments, quote, "Too many CBI-approved projects either never get off the drawing board, grind to a halt, or aren't completed on time. In some cases, developers engage in downright fraud by collecting investment without building anything at all."
We have become a government that is evidence-based. I think that they have an amazing project in St. Kitts. We've sent people up to see it. It's fairly far advanced, and the Galaxy people seem very well financed. And I'm grateful, one, that they've chosen to come to St. Lucia. Two, I'm very grateful that they've been able to now step in to the project in Canals, and I'm looking forward to seeing that project start.
Are you comfortable with the investment?
I am. We're also in very advanced stages. The plans have now been submitted to the DCA, and they're currently conducting their EIA at the property that we know as Honeymoon Beach. That is being done by a group called Galaxy. Galaxy currently are constructing a property in St. Kitts called Ramada.
CIP-approved real estate projects around the region have not fared well, with mixed results in some countries. While the government of St. Lucia has expressed faith in Galaxy Real Estate, the company has encountered challenges in other territories. For example, in St. Kitts,
Galaxy people seem very well financed.
According to Investment Migration Insider, which has developed a tracking tool to keep tabs on such developments, quote, "Too many CBI-approved projects either never get off the drawing board, grind to a halt, or aren't completed on time. In some cases, developers engage in downright fraud by collecting investment without building anything at all."
Invest St. Lucia has breathed new life into the previously abandoned Canals Development Project, and an Asian-owned real estate company, Caribbean Galaxy Group, has inked a multi-million-dollar deal with the government to construct 2 sprawling luxury resorts at the canal site in Micoud. The COVID-19 pandemic has delayed the start of canal's construction. However, once completed and operational, several new jobs could become available to scores of St. Lucians, a plus for Invest St. Lucia and the economy. Now, the preferred construction arrangement for any development venture, according to Invest St. Lucia executives, would be to use St. Lucian companies and laborers. However, where canals is concerned, Caribbean Galaxy Group has opted to fly in most of their workforce.
NBC Prime obtained footage of a recently built compound reportedly constructed for the purposes of housing foreign workers.
If, say, I know you've been running away from it, but if, say, an investor comes and he says that I want to have 1,000 or 90% people from X country that are not St. Lucians, Invest St. Lucia would then say no. Okay, you can put it in your proposal, but we will not recommend a project that does not benefit St. Lucians and St. Lucian employment. Although we're not necessarily the ones signing the contract, we as a government agency responsible for investments do have an opinion, and we would have no issues in giving that opinion.
That opinion is presumably considered by the Cabinet of Ministers, who ultimately determines whether to proceed with a development project. Canals has been earmarked for touristic development since 2007. The ensuing decades-long and at times controversial attempts to lock in an investor came to fruition in 2019.
This is the fruit of visionary leadership, hard work, time, policy making, bold partnership, and extensive promotion.
A groundbreaking ceremony for Caribbean Galaxy Group's Canals Resort Development Project, hosted by the government, was held more than a year ago, last January.
This is a development that we can support.
Caribbean Galaxy Group will transform hundreds of acres of pristine coastal Micoud land into high-end vacation suites and condominiums. The lucrative contracts to build Galaxy Group's Canals Resort, however, appear destined for outside workers. Invest St. Lucia chairman Binkley Francis is hoping to change that.
I was privy to the contract that Canals had with AM Resorts, and they were very, very strict timelines. They have been eager to come to St. Lucia and they want to see it happen now, right? So they had to deliver that project within a specified period of time. Very unrealistic in my mind, but I think it was ambitious, but they felt they could do it. The best option was to bring in labor from outside. So we did negotiate with them very, very hard. And obviously, myself, the Prime Minister, it's St. Lucia first, so we need to make sure that our people get the jobs first, right? And especially you're aware that it is a CIP project. So our position was that 80% of the employees has to be St. Lucians, right? And that is where we were with that, right? I believe since the pandemic, the project has pretty much slowed down. They have committed to moving ahead with the project, but there is definitely an opportunity to revisit that. We have people available right now because a lot of the project has slowed, right? And when we do decide to start that project again, it will be a different conversation.
NBC Prime understands the compound built not too far from the Canals Resort site at Micoud is currently uninhabited. Now, sources close to the project claim the workers expected to occupy the living quarters will come from parts of Asia.
What was the ideal quota? I mean, what was the ideal quota? Or let's say negotiating on the amount of hookers.
I'll tell you, what I want is 100% St. Lucians. That is my ideal quota.
The best option was to bring in labor from outside. So we did negotiate with them very, very hard.
The Canals Resort Development Project, once mired in controversy, has again been signed off on and is on track to begin construction. Except most of the laborers for the Canals project, which is spearheaded by Caribbean Galaxy Group, an Asian-owned real estate firm, will be imported.
The best option was to bring in labor. The best option was to bring in labor.
You know the worst part? The hotel that's half finished, 30%, 40% over in St. Kitts, still isn't finished. But the Prime Minister, with a deal where his lawyer, Mark Mirage, represents Galaxy Group, and nobody's talking about that, bringing in Chinese labor, up to 200 laborers. I thought it was 100 before, but it is actually 200 because there's a glut of Chinese labor in the Caribbean because the Chinese said during COVID, even though they pulled out their business operations, that they do not want the Chinese nationals to return home. So while Jamaica, Trinidad, Grenada, Barbados are trying to make sure that they don't have Chinese laborers, here, where we have record unemployment and tradesmen in Miku, this is in the Prime Minister's constituency, Deriso, Tiroche, all these places, Diga, in places like Dennery, Bois-Joli, all these places, you have Vieux-Fort, you have Labre, you have Bexar, you have Babonneau Castries, all over St. Lucia, unemployed tradesmen. You're building a hotel, but you're busy building, not the hotel, the living quarters for the Chinese. All the equipment is Chinese, everything Chinese. You already have some Chinese staying at Tiroche. But Chasney, again, no shame, will come and say the exact opposite of the chairman of the United Workers' Party and the head of Invest St. Lucia by turning around to say that this project is going to create jobs for St. Lucians, both in construction and in terms of permanent staff. But here's the funny thing, folks, you know the Chinese are more racist than whites who are racist. And you know the one thing that has been proven, they do not like black people even to serve them.
One of the recently approved government projects which has garnered considerable interest is the Galaxy Group Canals Resort Real Estate Project, which is a $300 million tourism-related project consisting of 2 all-inclusive hotels. Since becoming an approved development during 2019-2020 financial year, the project has received 18 applications from persons interested in investing for that financial year, and an additional 83 applications in 2020-2021. Physical works on the project had previously started with some structures being erected, as well as the site preparatory works. Unfortunately, construction works have been delayed due to the pandemic. Mr. Speaker, it is my hope that the works will recommence as soon as possible, as this project will generate significant direct economic activity for St. Lucia, particularly in the south of the island, which has long been overlooked, with 400 persons being employed during the construction and over 700 persons to be employed either full-time or on a part-time basis upon completion of the project.
So we'll open up the lines 5727588 and 4847588. We can talk about anything that I've highlighted or anything else. But I must say, if you're going to fall for it now, then so be it. I will not approach anything in this upcoming election with anger or fear. I will simply say, if you were the ones who were waiting for the DSH jobs and you didn't get them, or for the range that he screwed up, or for any of the other projects. Remember 1,500 people will be employed with Teo King? How's that worked out? Now, you are seeing in front of your very eyes, the head of Invest St. Lucia telling you they're bringing in foreign laborers in the middle of COVID times too. And on top of that, that they are building for Chinese workers. But still, it's up to you if you want to believe the Prime Minister. Believe it. Just like the renderings, just like the 6 hotels that he promised in 2006, 2007, and also in his presentation in the Senate as Minister for Tourism, of how many hotel projects you ever go across by Marlin Key over in Rodney Bay. That was supposed to be another one of the projects, and there were projects, 3 hotels in Miku and this, that, all of that. How many times can somebody bluff you? Even the story of the boy who cried wolf has an end. When are we going to put an end to it? It's no longer entertaining. It's not funny. It's not believable. No amount of manufactured charisma or Cambridge Analytica charm points and talking points. No amount of quoting a willow this and a that and the other. None of that is going to change the fact that this entire prime ministership, his tenure has been like his fireworks display. Loud, bombastic, a lot of flash, and once the smoke clears, nothing substantially to benefit the lives and livelihoods of the people of St. Lucia. All he's done is create a huge wealth inequality gap and concentrate, literally now has concentrated a neo-colonial model of privatization and liquidation which favors, in amazing coincidence, I guess, his immediate family, his father, himself, his sister, of course his in-laws, and those whom he admires from other countries. Folks, ask yourself for CIP, why, let's take Tewa King for example, why, if you have an architect that knows nothing about passport sales, why would you give him to sell passports? Why wouldn't you, if you want to target China for sales, have a marketing company over in China or some other agency that does sales? It has to be discrimination. That's what it is. It's somebody's preference. You see the rest of the Caribbean countries, Mia Motley and them, looking to open embassies in Ghana and trying to go sub-Saharan Africa to try to get business. All Chasney talks about, whether it's tourism, whether it is tourism or tourism, because it's all tourism, because even agriculture is tourism, everything is tourism, is either Anglo-European, American, or Canadians. And when you get a Malaysian, Chinese, their money, and of course, his real home in the Caribbean, Jamaican, like the guy for ITEL BPO, well, they have another opening ceremony for another building that we, the people of St. Lucia, built and retrofitted for him. During COVID, we have retrofitted 2 buildings for ITEL BPO. $7 million plus, but they won't disclose it. And the worst part is we do not know even now what the terms and conditions are for how much we are paying the staff, just like with regards to Ojo, or for how long. I'll take this call. Good afternoon, caller.
Hello.
Good afternoon, caller.
Hi, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I want to know whether or not you'll have done an investigation to find out whether or not these Chinese are registered to vote.
No, well, Claudius Francis, as somebody who was an election observer and all the rest of that, has pointed out that they would have to be here for 2 years, and they would have had to have gotten multiple clearances in terms of work permits, in terms of voting, because it was a real concern. There may be foreigners that may get to vote, but not in these Chinese. And the Chinese have started arriving in St. Lucia as of March 23rd in terms of the laborers. The original 7 are staying in a guest house in Tiroche, and one of them is also looking to bring in trawlers, which will have a serious impact on the pelagic fishers that we have in St. Lucia when these guys start trawling the bottoms of the seas like they do in their territories.
Oh, okay, because I know I've seen some of them in the banks and they all have IDs.
Oh, yes.
And it's a St. Lucian ID.
Ah, I did not know that.
Yes.
I did not know that.
I was in the bank recently and some of them were there and they did have a St. Lucian ID. I was really surprised. I actually had to pull my ID out to make sure it was a St. Lucian ID, and it's the same thing.
Caller, well, all I can tell you, please take my number, 519-1818. So I don't want to speak about, I don't want you to mention the name of the bank or anything on air, but I would like to speak to you so I can investigate that further. Because
what's the number?
519-1818. And I let nothing go.
Okay. All right. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you, caller.
Okay. All right. Bye-bye.
That is troubling. We have another call? Okay. We'll wait for that one. But folks, you know what the truth is? You can't put anything past this government. They will do anything and everything in, around, or through the legal or not so legal channels. Good afternoon, caller. Hello?
Hello.
Yes, caller, go ahead.
Yeah, let me tell you. I watched Trisha show and I listened to Alan Shafi in the bulletin yesterday. I try to wonder whether it's somebody that have a large G or diarrhea shitting the same thing all the time.
Yep, the butchie have to throw.
Yeah, just staying by the toilet. As soon as it comes, dropping it. That's how I consider Alan Shasley budget address as. And I know from the time of the Warriors, Flumbo is a useless, wasteless, dishonest organization. I know these UWP people do not have anything resemblance of shame. They don't have that. All right? Now, what I'm going to say to you, Christopher, there's a lot of work St. Lucia Labour Party have to do, and by extension, those who say Shasley have to go, they have to do more work than the Labour Party if Shasley have to go. They have to have the cameras working properly. Not only watching people who give him money, but the policemen, some of the policemen, who some of them want to turn their backs. You can take the number. Even though they have a mask, it's easy to identify them.
Yes, and film them.
You see? So there are diplomatic way you can work that out. By somebody can talk to them or whatever, etc., etc. There are so many ways it can happen to make sure you identify the police officers who are against their own self, their family, their friends for selfish gains. All right? So there are many things that can be done. But what I can say to you today now again, Alan Chasnet to jump high. The woman they call Krishna, whatever name she has. I'm just telling her, if she loves St. Lucia, if she loves herself, stop doing stupidity work for Alan Chasnet, because it will not lead her to nowhere. Because God is not stupid. I'm just telling Krishna that, just as I'm saying to Milton Daisy and those who supporting Daisy to do wickedness to people, saying in the name of everybody in the world, I'm a police officer, chief of police officer for everybody. Well, that means one of the highest political liar in this country. From things I saw, clips, either Trisha or you played, to see the man without mask. I'm trying to wonder whether I call them the ordinary dishonesty. I'm trying to wonder where they were. Even the police, who is, I call him bodyguard, had the right to arrest Alan Shasley. He will not do it.
That's true.
I'm sure there are other policemen who saw it. They will never do nothing. But I'm saying to them, the more they wiggle, the deeper they will see. I'm saying it again. The more they wiggle, all those who are around Shasley and doing dirty work, the more they wiggle, they do it. Including Pickney Francis, who was a wicked fellow when he used to work for people like that. And I hope he will sign us so that we hear St. Lucia Labour Party. Because St. Lucia Labour Party have to investigate that idiot, nasty idiot. And just letting you know, Metal is a wicked, nasty fellow. The man has the same thing. Yes, a lot of them in St. Lucia, including Michael Shasley, a lot of them do a lot of wickedness to people to get where they are and to get money. A lot of them. The men all of them, they are successful.
But thank you, caller. We have another call to get in, but thank you very much.
Anyway, Christopher, take it easy, man.
You too. You too.
Later.
Okay. We have another call. We'll take one last call before we close off. But folks, make no mistake about it. There is one thing. For those of you, and it's your phones, vigilance, the price of a free and fair election with this government, this cabal, is going to be all of our vigilance. This is going to be the most difficult election of our lifetime, probably, simply because these guys will have all options on the table to keep themselves in power, and they're not afraid to use them. Good afternoon, caller. Your final caller. Hello?
Hello?
Yes, caller, go ahead. Yes,
hello, Mr.
caller, go ahead.
I'm telling you, the way Mr. Chasney treats the bananas people, if they ever vote this people, this man in again, these people in that place, the man against the banana people, he against the fishers, he against everybody, all the poor people. Huh? You telling me that you helping, you go to the IMF and get the loan to help the poor people and the people who don't have a job, the old people, huh? The people with so much children. And for you to take this money and you're gonna build road. And what about the 150 you put on the petrol?
Exactly.
Yeah? 150 you put on the gas. Huh?
Exactly.
And if the people who's going the fishery, if they cannot see, and the people, the farmers, the poor people, if they ever vote these people in this man, in these people in there again, Kwapo smoke our pipe.
Well said, caller.
I'm telling you that, Mr. Bishop.
Well said, caller.
Very, very, very bad what's going on in this country. People phoning in England and telling me about what this man doing. You mean to tell me St. Lucia cannot see what the man doing?
Yes, sad. Sometimes people are so busy in the struggle that, like I said, the strategy is simple for them. They starving people until they're grateful to be fed by the same man that's starving them. Is whether it's working or not, we'll see.
I'm telling you, sir, I didn't work in this country. I work in England all my life. And I come here. I regret I came here. When Kenny and Donny was all right here. Now, when I go in the supermarket, only me and my wife, my friend, I wonder how people with children, how they manage.
True. And the supermarkets are all raising their prices too. All over St. Lucia.
Always the price going up.
Yep.
How the poor people manage? How the people with the children, my friend? I tell you, only me and my wife, And my salary coming from England. How these people manage?
I honestly don't know.
And every day, sir, they phone in my house, my wife, and ask for a job. Every day,
Yes.
My wife phone, the house phone, asking for a job. I'm telling you, I regret. If they don't put this man in, if they put this man back in, I sell my house, my car, everything, on the price, and I go back.
Caller, let's hope it doesn't reach to that. Let's just hope.
And I hope. Look, these people, Europe give us this hospital.
Yep.
You telling me you taking people come here to make money in the hospital they give us? What the Europeans saying about that?
Oh, they are not.
What they doing about that?
They're not happy about that at all. And what's even worse, he doesn't even have health insurance. Now he said in the budget yesterday, they're going to push to have health insurance, something they could not do in 4 years. He said he wants to do it between now and March next year. And he already gave the people contract and endless millions in consultancies. I'll feature it again tomorrow, but it's ridiculous. This guy's attitude towards poor people and St. Lucians is reprehensible. But it is our attitude towards ourselves to accept it that is really frightening. What makes us believe that we need to be tortured like this, I don't know. But caller, I'm out of time. Thank you very much for calling, and I hope you do call again.
Much. Bye-bye.
So folks, I'm out of time, but I want to do my civic duty before I go. I'm making a special appeal to the Police Commissioner, Miltong Daisy. Yesterday, I saw something that obviously You can go, and since you all have been talking about the lack of ammunition and the Prime Minister has been talking about you all not having any bullets, I want to show you first, I'm telling you that I saw so many bullets yesterday that I got somebody to take a photo of the floor of the House of Parliament, and I think you should go and investigate. Let's show that so you can see the bullets that were found on the floor of Parliament after Chasney gave his speech yesterday in terms of the budget presentation. I don't know if there are any unused rounds that you can use, but I can tell you it's a crime scene because I believe the English language was murdered and shot to death yesterday. We can come off of that. And sadly, Chasney, who gets sympathy because he won't admit whatever speech impediment or learning disorder he seems to have, but I think it's more attitudinal. It's always amazing to me that he makes fun of people while he, well, see for yourself.
The same way that Philip here stutters.
Mr. Speaker, having established the raison d'etre for this government's infrastructure program, as well as the installation of water and electricity supply networks, we'll continue to ensure that we have a cadre of healthcare personnel which is for the tax regime to some semblance of normalcy. Experiencing resurgences. Mr. Speaker, as a direct in the post-pandemic area. Neglect that comprise connectivity to the hybrid of virtual and face-to-face elements would enable us to do just that.
The opinions expressed on this TV program by the hosts, co-hosts, guests, and call-in listeners or chatters are solely the opinions and responsibility of the original source who expressed them. They do not necessarily represent the opinions of UTV or its affiliates.